Hey there, you probably know why I, the big bad wolf, am here. And yes, it's ranting about something related to the current state of the Walt Disney Company. For some reason, they don't seem to have as much faith in the original animated features from Walt Disney Animation Studios and Pixar Animation. But they're more into the sequels from both studios, in addition to the live-action remakes I've talked about so much. But to elaborate, Disney doesn't bother to put much promotion behind the latest Walt Disney and Pixar animated features, featuring new and original characters and storylines. Yet they go and promote the sequels all from the get-go. I don't understand it. Don't they even listen to people complaining about too many sequels and such? Why don't they put more time and effort and money into promoting their new original movies? Currently, the case in question is Pixar's latest original feature, Elio, with their worst box office opening ever at just $35 million globally, compared to last year's Inside Out 2 being such a mega hit for them. Similarly, Walt Disney Animation Studios' Moana 2 was also a huge box office smash. But their most recent original animated features like Encanto and Strange World and of course Wish were financial failures, often relating to some kind of controversy. Why must it be this way? I mean, I'm actually really looking forward to Zootopia 2, being an ant-rotoot animal myself. But I don't want to see the beloved Disney studio go down that slippery sequel slope, the way DreamWorks and Illumination and now Pixar have. And speaking of DreamWorks, their live-action remake of How to Train Your Dragon, being Universal's idea of hopping on the remake bandwagon Disney started, has been pretty successful at the box office. But that's partly because it's an already popular brand. This is why this year, when it comes to Disney's live-action remakes, Snow White, understandably, was a flop. With those freaky CGI dwarves and changing Snow White's personality and love interest and other aspects, while the Lilo and Stitch remake was a huge success. It's now getting close to making $1 billion worldwide. This is because this is a remake many people found to look more promising. Not to mention that Lilo and Stitch is already one of Disney's biggest marketing brands. It especially helps that CGI Stitch still looks similar to his normal hand-drawn anime design and also has Chris Sanders reprising the role. He too is involved with both the original How to Train Your Dragon animated movie and its remake. But from what I'm seeing, Disney is now pretty much in a second dark age, after their first one in the 70s and 80s. And this time, Pixar is part of it, being their first dark age. After they dominated the theatrical animation market in the 2000s, became kind of hit and miss in the 2010s, and now this rut. Of course, the COVID-19 pandemic from 5 years ago had a huge part to play in this second dark era from Disney. Heck, it's affected just about all of the movie industry, and some of them still haven't fully recovered. The Warner Bros. Discovery merger is also a sign of this.
Yeah, if this were earlier, I would have been laughing at Pixar's misfortunes, but instead I sympathize with them, even after the Finding Nemo incident 21 years ago. Given both Disney and Warner Bros. Are going through hard times right now, I could really relate. This is why me and Porky's feature film The Day the Earth Blew Up nearly got shelved as a tax write-off. But indie distributor Ketchup Entertainment came to the rescue and gave it a limited theatrical release, where it was actually a somewhat modest success.
That's right, Daphne. And I've heard reports of families wanting to go see that instead of the Snow White remake. Ketchup Entertainment must have been aware that I said remakes. This movie could be something for parents to take their kids to, like on a rainy day or whatever. And it's like they knew the Snow White remake was going to bomb and that there was no risk, compared to pushing The Day the Earth Blew Up back from the originally planned late February release slot to avoid competing with Marvel's Captain America Brave New World. But they kind of worried for nothing, as that ended up having a mediocre box office draw, but nowhere as bad as the Snow White remake got. Now that was the kind of Disney flop I don't mind, compared to the original new films from Walt Disney Animation Studios and Pixar. I don't get why Disney seems to have no faith in those movies now, feeling it's not worth promoting them. Heck, the Snow White remake was promoted all from the get-go, yet many people still didn't see it. But when they post it on Disney Plus, they claim it's the #1 movie in the world. Ha! What a bunch of baloney! And I also remember Pixar's Lightyear and Disney's Strange World faced controversies in featuring homosexual-related moments that didn't help their chances at the box office very much, thanks to some clickbaity articles. The former having a lesbian kiss scene, and the latter having an openly gay main character. And Strange World's bombing also reminded me of when Disney's The Black Cauldron and Treasure Planet failed in 1985 and 2002 respectively, both being very different fantasy stories than what people normally accept from the Walt Disney Company. And this time, unlike Treasure Planet, over 2011's Winnie the Pooh flopped, they couldn't use hand-drawn 2D animation as a scapegoat. The heads at the Walt Disney Company are now fully aware 3D CGI animated movies can perform just as poorly as the box office. While this is nothing new, Pixar got their first taste at it 9.5 years ago when The Good Dinosaur became their first box office bomb, shocking nearly everyone, including yours truly. Then their second flop was Onward, and in addition to coming out just as the COVID-19 pandemic was closing down cinemas across the country, Disney curiously put little promotion behind it, thinking just the Pixar name would draw people alone. A warning sign of what was to come. Also on the Universal side, Illumination's most recent original anime movie, Migration, was a fairly modest box office success. While, of course, Despicable Me 4 was a much bigger hit, with that aforementioned sequel craze. Even if a couple years ago their Super Mario Bros. Movie made over $1 billion. But of course, that's based off a very popular video game franchise, so it's kind of different despite not being a sequel. Similarly, currently DreamWorks animation sequels are generally a lot more successful in their original ideas and such, so it's not just a Disney thing. It seems sequels and reboots are currently where it's at all across Hollywood and the industry. It's gotten to the point where Warner Brothers Animation hasn't really done an original TV series since the mid-2000s. Not since Coconut Thread's Fruit Salad Island flopped and was regarded as a SpongeBob knockoff. All their shows and movies since then were based off one of their existing properties, be it the Looney Tunes or DC Comics or Tom and Jerry or anything Hanna-Barbera related, including Scooby-Doo and the Flintstones. Though they did do an animated series based on Dr. Seuss's Green Eggs and Ham 6 years ago. Of course, Coconut Thread was from Warner Bros. Animation's second dark age, and they've since entered a third one, no thanks to their own corrupt CEO, David Zaslav. Heck, it seems all the motion picture industry is going through a dark era of some kind that the pandemic got started. I remember during the time Walt Disney was still alive, they didn't believe in sequels, as after producing a few follow-up shorts of my Oscar-winning Silly Symphony to Three Little Pigs that weren't as successful, old Walt said, "You can't top pigs with pigs." Also, recently Disney's creative chief officer Jared Bush teased that they are working on some new hand-drawn anime projects. Now, I know they've kept saying they're going to do some hand-drawn animation for several years now, even after the Winnie the Pooh movie flopped, but it hasn't really happened. But maybe some of those recent CGI Disney box office bombs convinced the management otherwise. But to be honest, I don't really see Disney going back to regularly making full-length hand-drawn animated feature films, given CGI animation is less expensive and it's easier to do. Also, Walt Disney Animation and Pixar are currently the only such studios that still do in-house animation in the United States right now. It's like in the 80s when television animation mostly shifted being done overseas, to the point where Disney even had animation studios in Australia and France and Japan and the United Kingdom for this. But even with that, they're still frequently subcontracted to Wang Film Productions in Taiwan and Toon City in the Philippines. Plus, the Disney Toons movies, i.e. the theatrical titles based on their TV shows or being upgraded direct-to-video sequels, were also animated overseas in the 90s and 2000s, since they were produced cheaper that way. Heck, much of a Goofy movie was animated overseas, largely in France, with the concert scene being done in Australia, and it looks so good, and at least a couple bits being animated in Canada by Phoenix Animation. But I can see Disney going back to making hand-drawn animated shorts to be released theatrically on a semi-regular basis. Those could still wow people, seeing such a short before a CG animated movie. I know they've been experimenting with that off and on for some time now, such as Goofy's How to Hook Up Your Home Theater, The Ballad of Nessie, the Oscar-winning Paperman, and Annie-winning Get a Horse that combine hand-drawn and CGI animation so well, along with Inner Workings, and Once Upon a Studio also doing that. Once Upon a Studio was one of the good things to come from Disney's Centennial a couple years ago, and not just because I'm in it. And there's also a DIY Duck short Walt Disney Animation Studios made for Donald Duck's 90th birthday, released online. But if Disney starts making more hand-drawn animated theatrical shorts, maybe I'll get to appear in one of them. After all, my debut Three Little Pigs Silly Symphony won an Oscar for Best Animated Short. They could adapt a fairy tale about the wolf and the seven kids, for example. Also, Pixar announced for next year they're coming out with Gato, which will blend hand-painted textures with their usual CGI animation. It's good to see Pixar experiment this way, especially after other studios have done so, since the successes of Blue Sky's The Peanuts movie and Sony's Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. But they still have a Ratatouille 2 in the works, from what I heard. But the point is, if Disney or Pixar is doing an anime movie that's an original story and not a sequel or reboot, they need to market it as much as they do with said sequels, being aware that's what the public wants. I know the Walt Disney Company is currently still in kind of a rough financial spot, and I think they're buying 20th Century Fox for the insane price of $52 billion. It was a big contributor. Yet they're still throwing away money by renewing The Simpsons and Family Guy for 4 more seasons each, as those shows have been pulling in really low ratings on Fox and low revenue, like a whole string of box office bombs. If this keeps up, either the Fox network is going to go bankrupt, or Disney will financially suffer some more. Can't you see SpongeBob and Ricky and Morty are more popular now, as that most recent 3D movie maker short here lampooned? But at least our CEO Bob Iger will be leaving the Walt Disney Company in 2026. I really hope we get a better CEO than him or Bob Chapek, one who really cares about our company's legacy and would respect what old Walt wanted. Until then, keep watching this YouTube channel to hear whatever eventually comes from this, or anything else Zach Wolf or Sam Valentino have to share for you all.